What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. Today we are going to be doing an extension of our off-season update with the London Bulldogs. I realized after making that video that there were a couple of topics that I actually kind of wanted to elaborate more on. One of those topics being something that I completely did not address at all, and that was the additions to the team, because as I was going through the roster, some of you guys might have seen a couple of free agent signings and things like that that were added to the team that I didn't necessarily point out. And so I want to go ahead and recap some of those signings here for you guys today. The first signing that I want to point out is wide receiver Clarence Wilkerson. Now, this is a guy that was actually on our roster last season. He didn't get to play a lot. He only had a couple of catches, but we did decide to bring him back for this season just as kind of a little bit of a veteran presence, somebody that has decent hands. When he did get his opportunities, he didn't really drop any balls or anything like that, so I did want to point out that signing. In addition, I wanted to point out the signing of right tackle Travis Waddle. And so you guys know, if you watch the first portion of this video, that we did trade away a couple of offensive linemen, and so we obviously kind of needed to backfill that position. And so sitting this year with 3 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and then 2 fifths, I don't really know how we're going to be able to fill in those positions, or if we're going to be able to fill in those positions. So I made the move to sign right tackle Travis Waddle, who's going to be a really solid veteran player that can rotate in for us. And he's a guy that I have no hesitation putting in, simply because he has pretty good stats all around. It's not like he's going to be necessarily bad in any one area, and he's actually a pretty good athlete on top of that. And so Travis Waddle is joining the team as a veteran presence on the offensive line, as more of a rotational guy that'll be around for one season. Another notable signing here is Sherman Fluker, who is actually a really interesting one. Sherman Fluker is a guy that actually came in and produced for us really well this season because of the Drew Brewer injury, and so he came in and had 7.5 sacks in however many games he played for us this season. He actually didn't play that many games, and so he was really productive, and I think that he will be a good rotational player, especially if somebody comes down with an injury. Now, the reason that I held off on bringing him back was because I wasn't sure how much he would regress. You guys can see that he's 34 years old, but he only went down like 1 overall point or something like that, probably because he was really effective. He did go down from superstar to star dev. Not that I think that's going to really have any impact, considering the fact that, again, he's 34 years old and below an 80 overall, so he didn't have a superstar ability anyway, but he retains 85 power move, 82 finesse move, and really, honestly, pretty balanced stats in every single other category. And so this is a guy that I was really happy to get back. I'm honestly kind of surprised that he didn't go down any lower than he did, but as a 34-year-old, I think that, again, that's another good one-year signing for us. Next up, we brought in right end Rich Barnett, and this one I think is actually going to be a really interesting signing for us, because this guy is a guy that provided 4 sacks this season for the team that he was with, and 29 tackles and 8 tackles for loss, and he was not a full-time starter from my understanding. Now, I could be mistaken with that, but looking at his abilities here, his ratings and everything, he looks like a really effective player. So he kind of fits what we're trying to do on the defensive line, because he's not necessarily slow or anything like that. He's not necessarily fast. I mean, obviously, he's only got 69 speed, but he's got really good acceleration. So, he's more of an interior defensive lineman. He's got really good power moves at 89, and he's got 85 strength, good play recognition, not great block shed or anything like that. But this is a guy that I think, from a pass rusher's perspective, is going to add a little bit of value to this team, especially if we end up with any injuries or we need to rotate guys in at all. I think that Rich Barnett is actually going to be a really nice one-year pickup for us, and has the potential to maybe stick around for a while. He is 30 years old. If he does well, he might stick around or something of that nature, and so a guy that I liked adding to the team. We also added right end Kevin Studebaker, who is a young 25-year-old star, 68 overall player. This is another guy that, he's a little bit faster with 77 speed, but not necessarily a bad player, 82 strength, 77 power moves, but not necessarily a great player either. I just kind of added him for his star development, and I want to give him a shot to see, maybe he can do something with the team. Maybe he can develop into a good player. Maybe he's worthwhile. And so, just a young guy that we can add in to potentially give him a shot, at least during preseason and things like that. And then, since we traded away defensive tackle Tyler Keltner, we decided to bring in right end Gordon Levchik and move him to defensive tackle. So he's going to be filling that void. He is a guy that was on this team in preseason last year, but got cut due to roster size. he's a guy that I like a lot, and he actually played pretty well for us. He was just kind of an unfortunate cap casualty, or an unfortunate roster casualty, and he comes back in with pretty nice looking stats, decent speed, pretty good strength and block shedding and everything like that. So another run stopper for us. He's not going to be a threat to get many sacks or anything like that, but this is a guy that I think will be effective as a backup player for us, and so I do like the addition of Gordon Levchuk as a veteran signing as well. So you guys can tell that we've beefed up the offensive and defensive line quite a bit, and that was one of our main focuses in terms of bringing in veterans, was to kind of beef up the offensive and defensive line to try to improve what we actually have coming in as backup players. The other area that I wanted to address that I had mentioned in part 1 of this video was the regression of the team, and not really getting much regression in comparison to other teams around the league. And I never really came back to that idea, and I never showed you guys the regression of the team. So I did want to go to our player regression and show you guys that we are one of the teams that had some of the least amount of regression within the league. And you guys can see here that we only had 3 players that are technically on the roster right now that had regression, and that was cornerback Brandon Bowen, who lost 11 total attribute points, but he didn't go down too much. Richard Porter, the right guard, went down 2 attribute points. And then wide receiver Saul Leckie went down with 14. And that's a bit of a hit for Saul Leckie, but these are guys that we expected to go down a little bit. And for that to be all we have, that's really nothing at all. And then you guys can compare it to, other teams have an entire team's worth of regression. If I go to the Bulldogs, I literally cannot even scroll over. These are the only players on the team that suffered any amount of regression. And that's kind of key to what we've been doing with this team, is we've been trying to make this team younger. You guys can see that the oldest players on our team are the guys that we re-signed as like veteran backups. And the oldest full-time starter on the team is wide receiver Saul Leckie. Now, obviously, we've got Richard Porter, who took a little bit of a hit, but then beyond that, the oldest player was 28 years old going on 29. So wide receiver Stanley Whitehead, Timmy Merritt, Jack Brodine, and Brandon Bowen, they all just hit the age of 29. And then below that, we have a bunch of guys that are 27, 26. We have a super young team, and I don't know what our average starter's age is on the offensive side of the ball or defensive side of the ball, or the team as a whole, or anything like that, but we are certainly one of the younger teams in the league. And that was a point that I wanted to hit on, was that this is a team that is going to be better this year than they were last year, especially considering our free agent signings, because we really didn't lose a whole lot. We didn't lose many in terms of starters, and we did add some significant players in terms of key positional roles. One thing that I will say is that there are a couple of positions that I think are pretty clearly going to be, looking to be addressed as we move forward. Now, there's no guarantee on who we draft. Some mock drafts have us drafting one guy, drafting another guy. Shout out to RFL Network, and shout out to Mitchie and Coach Forbes. Check out their mock draft. They did a solid job with it, but obviously they can't perfectly pin down every single draft pick or anything like that, and so it might shape up differently. But we are, certainly looking for a safety, maybe a linebacker, maybe a defensive lineman that can add to our pass rush and things like that, maybe a cornerback. All stuff that I addressed in the first part of this video, but certainly some things that I think are worth thinking about, and a couple of points here that I obviously wanted to address that I kind of forgot to go over within the first video. So those are just a couple of things that I wanted to point out here. And then the final topic that I wanted to kind of come to today that I forgot to address the last time is I did want to take a look at our salary table and give you guys a little bit of an idea of how things have played out with our salary. So, coming into this offseason, we had about $80 million in cap space. We spent a lot of that cap space on guys like Duke Pascal, who we had to pay essentially edge rusher money for. And the reason being for that was that he was coming in with as an outside linebacker, and so Madden forces you to sign those guys as an outside linebacker. So it's worth pointing out that this guy got a 5-year contract, averaging around like $25 or $26 million per year. So a lot of money to pay a guy like that, and I know a lot of people might look at that and say, wow, that's kind of crazy, but we needed that type of impact player on our team, and we had $80 million in cap space to spend, so we figured we might as well lock him up on a solid contract. But outside of that, we really don't have a whole lot of cap issue right now. You know, within the past couple of seasons, if you guys have been following the Bulldogs, you might know that we took over this team in a bad financial situation, and so we got them to a point where we could, you know, fix their cap space. And basically, it kind of led up to this year being the year where we would have no cap penalty and we would be able to, you know, go out and sign some free agents, and that's kind of the case. Now, we've gotten a little bit of a cap penalty right now, and we'll have a little bit of cap penalty in this year because of the trades and stuff that we've made, and we might end up carrying over a tiny bit of cap penalty into our future year, but it's not going to be a lot. We do currently sit with $31.9 million in cap space. $15.5 million of that is rookie reserve. Some of these things are going to work out wonky because of the way that the RFL works, being split into two files. We do have some draft picks from, you know, teams that are in the NRC, and you obviously can't, you know, split draft picks across files and stuff like that. So it might work out a little bit wonky with that, but something that I wanted to keep in mind is that, you know, we are up for contract negotiations on a couple of guys, and we did sign a couple of guys to one-year deals. So like Jay Morris, for example, was a one-year deal. A lot of those veteran guys that we brought in were on a one-year deal. You're going to see guys like Richard Porter are on expiring deals and whatnot. And so, you know, we kind of took the veteran approach of just paying guys on one-year deals to see what they can do for us this year, and then, you know, we'll make decisions next year whenever we come to them. You know, we're obviously putting ourselves in a pretty solid financial position moving forward, and that is something that I wanted to put out there, you know, as a caveat to everything that's been going on in the offseason for us. So, you know, we will hopefully be able to continue to add to our team in the future if the players are there and available for us to sign. So with all that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you guys leave a like, comment, and subscribe. You know, like I said, just an extension of the first video with a couple of topics that I wanted to make sure I got out there. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you guys have a good one.